Hi, if you're thinking about teaching English online or you want to know the less obvious reality about it that nobody talks about, this video is a must-watch for you. I've been teaching for around 4 years, and today I'm going to be sharing the 6 things that nobody tells you about teaching online. Let's get to it. Well, the first one is working from home is not automatical freedom. Most people think that when they are working from home, they are working in their pajamas, they make coffee whenever they want, they can lounge around but also work at the same time. Well, I thought that too, and I thought that meant freedom, but actually, where you rest is also where you work, and that's really difficult. Technically, you can work from anywhere, and that is great. I think that's what we're all looking for. But the downside is that you're spending way more time at home than you thought, and the possibility to switch off is a little bit limited and a little bit restricted in terms of switching your brain off. You sure as hell have freedom of where you work, but how you work and which room you work in, and that gets a little bit harder. You have to be a little bit more intentional about creating freedom outside of work because you're spending much more time at home. The space where you go to sleep is also the space where you work. So it can really be hard to differentiate the two. Number 2 is your social battery gets depleted while sitting in your bedroom. You think you're a people person until you have spoken to people all day. This one surprised me because yes, I'm sitting at my desk, but why am I always exhausted? So that comes from speaking to people all day, every day. And liking people doesn't necessarily mean that your social battery is going to be unlimited. You're constantly socially on, even if you are at home. And since you're not naturally at home, there's no natural transition into leaving work behind and going home to enjoy your home. But you get to close your laptop and then you are technically done, right? So that is your transition from work to home. And that's something that you have to plan for and navigate. How are you going to compartmentalize? That is not the word, but you know which word I was looking for. When is your time to listen to people, to respond to things, explain things, and all of the good stuff that comes with speaking to people? But when is also your time to close the laptop, rest, spend time with family? You know, all of that has to be very concretely planned. Number 3 is that inconsistent bookings with teaching makes your job less secure. I thought originally that the more work, the lessons are going to be consistent and you just have to put in the hours. What I didn't realize is that with teaching, it's a kind of field where seasons can be bad and seasons can also be good. So it always fluctuates, and that fluctuation and sometimes like cancellations because people have lives and summers and holidays booked. Even if you haven't, that can cause a sort of issue about security at work. Sometimes your calendar looks good, you've got regular students, and then you think, I've got this in the bag. And then people go on holiday, they finish their subscriptions, and it's Christmas and people's schedules change. And that's fine, but it's something to account for. You have to prepare not only mentally about that, but also financially and emotionally with the previous point. It doesn't mean that every month is going to look like that, but if you plan forth, it's going to be a little bit better for you. I'd probably have another income stream just for that pure fact, because fluctuation can stress you out, and if you're not planned for those things, then you're not helping yourself really. Number 4 is probably the most felt for me, was realizing that teaching requires total emotional presence. Something I always had, and I thought I was a people person, and I love teaching to see progress in people. However, I think people underestimate how physically demanding or how internally demanding this job is, because you're not only explaining grammar, you are meeting that person, the student, where they are in terms of their understanding, their language level. Then you have to translate your perspective into an explanation that would be digestible for them, because each person needs to understand something different and each different goal requires a different approach. So it's constantly being present with translation of the language, translation of their inner world, and also encouraging them to improve. Maybe the way that I'm explaining things right now to you makes sense, but absolutely doesn't make sense to another person. So now I'm thinking, how can I explain this in a different way based on their level? So meeting them where they are. You're reading their face. You're reading their tone of voice. You're figuring out why they're confused. Which part are they confused about? Are they internalizing what I'm saying? Are they understanding what I'm saying? You're encouraging them when they're embarrassed about mistakes. You're changing the lesson when something isn't landing on the spot. A lot of this work, in my opinion, has to be on the spot, especially with new students, but I can do more videos about teaching if that's something you want to see. Comment and I will do that. And honestly, some people just want to connect. They just want to talk. They want to practice their natural personality through a different language. People tell you about their families, about their jobs, relationships, countries, weird situations they've been in, things that they perhaps haven't shared before, and I cherish that part so much, but also it's very emotionally costly, should I say. To another person, it might just look like, oh, she's just getting paid for speaking to people. But actually, if you really observe what's happening and the structure and the effort that's put into lessons, it becomes much more than just talking for an hour. Number 5 is flexibility can be a lack of structure. The best part about this job is flexibility. The worst part about this job is flexibility. At first, you're the one that's driving the lessons. There is no 9 to 5 unless you schedule your hours that way, depending on the country of the students that you're teaching. But sometimes your schedule doesn't always go that way, and it takes a bit of time to get a lot of students. So maybe you have a lesson at 9 and then nothing until 1, and then lessons at 3, or you have your morning free and then evenings are rammed. So it's always really different. And what I've learned is that flexibility works best when you still give it some structures. But by doing this job, you learn what works for you and what doesn't work. So that's why you have to work with your energy instead of against it. Granted, some days you will push through and you're supposed to, but the majority of the time you're going to find out that your structure is very different to another person's day structure. Does that make sense? So adaptation is going to be your best survival mechanism. So instead of trying to make every single day identical, what tends to happen, and the best thing that happens, is I get better at moving around the days to work with what I actually have got. And last but not least, you think you're a people person until you talk to people all day. My favorite part about this job, aside the flexibility, is talking to people from different countries all over the world. But liking people does not mean you are excited every single day about talking to people all the day. I think the biggest lesson that online teaching has taught me is that you can love human connection and still have a limit of how much conversation you can process in one day, in a few hours, in an hour. Because every lesson you're listening, responding, asking questions, asking random questions that have an extremely important purpose, thinking of what to say next, what's going to help them, correcting things at the same time as listening, and asking questions, keeping the conversation moving. And then another face pops up on the screen and you're like all over again. Hello, how are you? Where are you from? And internally, sometimes you feel like, oh my God, I have no words left. So another huge thing is figuring out your social capacity rather than what it should be. And weirdly, teaching has actually taught me about how I work just as much as teaching itself. So yeah, teaching has given me so much. It's taught me a lot about freedom. It's taught me a lot about how I like to work and what is my capability of peopling for the day and for the week, and how I can realistically handle everything in one day and how much of that. If you're teaching online, figuring out what works for you, or just wanting to take that next step to teach, I hope that this has given you a little bit more of a realistic picture of what it takes and what nobody really talks about. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.